In this video, I want to talk about how people try to save time on the road by not doing the right thing and how it doesn't get them anywhere quicker. The only thing it is that they're doing is risking getting a ticket, risking getting into a collision, and there is pretty much no advantage to what they're doing. Now, the light has just turned green. We're about to proceed through the intersection, and just as we were about to do this, a motorcycle comes by and makes a right turn here. If this happens on the road test, it's an immediate fail. And even a slower version of this, like this is just blatantly, this is a complete disregard for the law. But even if they kind of came in here and slowed down and kind of just rolled through and made the turn, that would still be an immediate fail on a road test. So when you have a red light in BC, you have to make a complete stop. You need to shoulder check to right to make sure that there's no cyclists or pedestrians coming up beside you to possibly use this crosswalk here, or pull up in front of you if it's a cyclist. And we need to make sure there's no sign prohibiting us from turning right on a red light. But all that set aside, this person takes this additional risk, and we'll see in a little while that it didn't actually get them home quicker. It didn't really get them anywhere, really. But as we're coming up, we're seeing this driver here, and it kind of feels as though they're sticking out just a little bit too much. I mean, it's probably right at the utmost edge of where they could be. Now let's talk about why they might have possibly had to do this. And it might have been that they had the tree here and the telephone pole here, and it was possibly a little bit harder to see what's going on down this road. But let me go back a bit. Yeah, there's quite a few trees and telephone poles along the way, so it might be just hard for that vehicle to see, so they might have pulled forward. But this is a good example of how we sometimes have to go forward enough at a stop sign to be able to see what's going on. So they have a stop sign here, so they've stopped, or they should have stopped behind their stop line, check to see if anyone's coming up to use this crosswalk, and then they should pull forward to the point where they can see without impeding the movement of cross traffic, which in this case is us. Now, very often if we're at a stop line with a student and I ask them to go forward, they'll go forward like this much and then they'll stop. I'm like, we need to go a little bit further forward, and then they'll go a little bit more forward and then they stop. I'm like, okay, why don't we inch forward and I'll tell you where to stop. And they'll inch a little bit more forward and then they won't go anymore. I'm like, we still can't see. And what's effectively happening is they're afraid of going too far and blocking this path, and rightfully so. So what is one to do, right? How are you supposed to know how far to go forward without blocking the path of these vehicles? So what I have students do is we'll go to a parking lot where we have a curb in front of us, and then I ask them to slowly drive towards that curb, kind of as if you're going to park a forward stall into a stall, and tell me where that is, where you think that the front of your car is about to go over that curb, right? And so if they go a little bit forward and they're like, yep, that's it, that's as far as I can go, I'll tell them to park the car. We check to make sure it's clear. We get out of the car and we go forward and look. And very often they're surprised that they still have another half a meter in front of them. And we do this bit by bit by bit until they get to the point where the front of their car is just before that curb. And then I ask them to follow the edge of that curb and see where does it intersect their window or their side windows, right? And so what would be happening here if we were this driver, from their point of view, if they took an imaginary line connecting this curb to this curb, so the line that's running right in front of their car, that line from their point of view would go into the corner of their window here, right beside their driver's side mirror. And if that imaginary line goes any further into the car, so closer to them than the mirror there, then they're too far out, right? So they would have been sticking out. Now, I'm not sure if this person used that trick or they were just really good at knowing how far to go before they had impeded our movement. But if they'd been any further forward than this, it would be too far forward. So I'm not asking students to go right to this extreme, but it is necessary to know how far to go forward, whether you're going straight through and you need to see what's going on, or whether you're making a right turn or left turn. Now, moving on, we'll cover this in another video as well, but we're coming up and we can see that motorcyclist is just kind of driving away. And so we've got construction coming up here. So we're doing a safe lane change, signal, mirror shoulder check before we drift over into this lane. And then we have a pedestrian that is coming up to use a crosswalk. Let's just go back a little bit and see whether Mustang driver could have stopped for this pedestrian. And yeah, they totally could, because if they were scanning from further back, they could see that that pedestrian is starting to enter into the crosswalk, and they could see that this car is starting to stop for that pedestrian. Now, there could be a case made for Victoria Taxi here that they're at the point of no return, so they need to go through. That's fine. But this car, from being this far back from that intersection, should have totally waited. But in any case, they choose to cut this pedestrian off. And so we will pause here and let them cross, and then we continue. Notice we didn't make a complete stop, but that was because she's pretty much off our lane and we're still at this side of the intersection. What sometimes happens with students is if the pedestrian is walking at this crosswalk, they rush up towards that crosswalk. The pedestrian goes kind of like this, and then they're like, and then the student's like, why are they not crossing? It's like, would you jump in front of a moving vehicle that doesn't look like they're slowing down fast enough, right? So our speed is not really making them feel like they have to hop out of the crosswalk, and it doesn't make them feel like there's imminent danger, right? So we proceed, and we can see further down this road, the light is red, and as we approach the intersection, you will see that, what do you know, this motorcyclist is waiting at the exact same light as us. So, you know, we're 57 seconds into the video, so initially it looked like this motorcycle, by pulling this stunt, was going to be really far ahead. But if they were smart enough, they would over time realize, hey, you know that vehicle I just cut off 3 blocks ago? They're right up beside me at the next intersection, or I can see them approaching, you know, right at the end there, right? So they need to kind of think through this and see, I'm taking on all this additional risk, right? I am going faster than the speed limit. I'm cutting people off, and then it's getting me nowhere. So I'm becoming more dangerous to other drivers, to other pedestrians, crossing at a crosswalk, and then for what, right? So the takeaway from this video is that, and this is what I always tell students, is, you know, you come up to this stop line, and if you're not going to stop and you're just going to roll through, you know, on the road test, you're not getting brownie points for it, right? You're not going to get back to ICBC, park the car, and the exam is going to be like, well, we managed to do this road test 6 minutes earlier than scheduled, so I'm going to give you 6 additional points, and it's to your benefit. No, right? They're going to be like, oh, by the way, you failed at that intersection because you just rolled through. And then they're going to give you the paper, get out of the car, and slam your door shut and walk in, right? And they're like, don't waste our time. Learn the rules of the road. Red means come to a complete stop. So I hope you learned something from this video, and I'll see you in the next one.